Assalamu alaikum ji. Welcome to another webinar. My name is Nadeemul Haq. I'm from PIDE. This is a joint webinar between Social Protection Research Center and PIDE. As I've told you often, we love to do collaborative work. So here we are collaborating with Social Protection Research Center, which has been set up by Safdar Suhail, a well-known former civil servant, academic. Safdar Suhail is now also the Dean of the National School of Public Policy. So I think healthy aging is the subject. Healthy aging is a very important subject. I would like our panel introduce shortly to tell us about healthy aging, because as far as I know, Pakistan, I think, doesn't want aging at all. Because I learned recently that people over 60 can't have a bank account or a credit card. So I guess the Pakistan policy seems to be that after 60, there is no life. That, or alternatively, you go into the informal sector, because ultimately they don't want to give you a credit card or a bank account. So you have to live in the informal sector. And here, FPR and everybody cursing you that you are not using bank accounts. So there we are. That's my take on this subject. But I think I'll invite Safdar Suhail, the entrepreneur who set up the Social Protection Resource Center, to be able to introduce the panel and give us their research. They've conducted a lot of research on the subject, healthy aging. So Safdar Suhail Saab, over to you.
सर सुहेल सफदर साहब ने ज्वाइन नहीं किया अभी तक सर
अभी ज्वाइन ही नहीं किया अच्छा चलिए ठीक है okay very
He's
good
trying to join अभी आ रहे हैं sir.
Then I shall continue. Well, we'll begin by introducing our chief guest, the Secretary for Human Rights, Mr. Inamullah Khan. Khan Saab, would you like to say something to begin the webinar, or would you like to come in at the close? What is your view?
Assalamu alaikum, sir. I think we should wait for another couple of minutes for the arrival of Dr. Safdar.
Okay, fair enough. So meanwhile, let me just go ahead and introduce the rest. We've got Dr. Asrar Zaidi, the Vice Chancellor of Government College University, a person who's again very well known and has done a lot of work on aging in UK and other places, and has been an advisor to Korea, etc. Then we've got Dr. Shahid Farooq, PhD Associate Professor. He's also done a lot of work on this, and he knows social protection very well. Then we got Dr. Palita Mahipala, Country Representative of WHO in Islamabad. And then we got young Matiur Rahman, Senior Specialist, Social Protection Resource Center, who apparently will introduce to us the report that the Social Protection Resource Center has done. So has Safdar Suhail joined us or not yet?
I'm calling him, sir.
Not yet, sir.
Not yet. So I think Matiur Rahman sir, why don't you start presenting and Safdar will join us while you're doing that. Is that okay? Hello.
सर मतियूर रहमान साहब ने अभी तक ज्वाइन नहीं किया सर
उन्होंने भी ज्वाइन नहीं किया. Oh my God.
Doctor, if it's okay, can I carry on this session? So if it's okay, I can present it first, because I have to dash out at 7:30.
Just a minute, wait, sir. Sir, मैं इसको continue करता हूँ. Thank you so much for a brief introduction. So the idea of this webinar is to basically introduce the healthy aging and how it can be measured. What are the dimensions? Those are important to the policy dimensions. So with this aim, we are looking for the policy solutions and try to see what can be done at the policy level to provide support to these people. Because as Dr. Nadeem said, there are some sort of issues related to the aging. Like he said, they are not allowed even to open a bank account and something like that. So with that, I'll request Dr. Palita to give some sort of introductory remarks on healthy aging and like that. Over to Dr. Palita.
Thank you so much. Good evening to everybody. Respected Mr. Inamullah Khan, Secretary, Ministry of Human Rights, who is the chief guest today, and all the other distinguished and most esteemed guests, members of academia, colleagues and friends, ladies and gentlemen. I am absolutely honored and extremely privileged to join you today in this very important discussion on the agenda of healthy aging in Pakistan. I congratulate the Social Protection Resource Center and Pakistan Institute of Development Economics for bringing the most esteemed experts together to deliberate on the way forward for ensuring well-being of all the people in Pakistan. It is pertinent to highlight here that the United Nations has proclaimed 2021 to 2030 the decade of healthy aging. This has created a huge global momentum. It was further endorsed by all the member states in World Health Organization Assembly last year. Today's discussion is to mark the commencement of our joint efforts to foster partnerships and accelerate progress towards healthy aging in the country and across the globe. With the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, it is even more critical and essential to effectively address factors that have impact on health and well-being of elderly. Ladies and gentlemen, we are aware the speed and scale of aging everywhere. Globally, there are more than 1 billion people aged 60 years or older, most living in low and middle-income countries. Aging population is considered as one of the most challenging demographic events in the 21st century. Globally, 2 people reach age of 60 years every second. And by 2030, 16% of the world population will be over 60 years. Many do not have access to the basic resources for a dignified and meaningful life. Pakistan, being the 5th most populous country in the world, is home to more than 10 million people over 60 years. It accounts to 6.5% of the total population, and it is estimated to be almost double, 12.9% by year 2050. The country, however, was ranked 92 out of 96 countries in the Global Age Watch Index that ranks countries according to the social and economic well-being of their older people on the top of the list were the Scandinavian countries beside the USA, UK, and Canada, which highlight the issues we need to really address. Dear colleagues, we are grateful to the global community for taking into account aging and all the people in the Sustainable Development Goals with the slogan of leaving no one behind. Aging is well embedded in SDG goals and targets, and we believe that the pledges of and the commitments made by countries on SDG will be honored by them. The World Report on Aging and Health, launched in 2015, formed the basis for defining the global strategy and action plan on aging. This strategy calls for transformative change and provides a framework for coordinated global action by governments, organizations, and partners. Translating the strategy into action, WHO has developed an integrated care for all the people, the ICOP package of tools that offers an approach to key stakeholders in health and social care to understand, to design, and to implement a person-centered and coordinated model of care for older people. In Pakistan, WHO is supporting contextualization and operationalization of these guidelines for building capacity of healthcare providers and home-based caregivers for health and well-being of older people. Esteemed colleagues, working closely with the Ministry of Health, WHO has supported the development of Essential Healthcare Service Package, or we call Universal Health Coverage Benefit Package, for community and primary care level in line with DCP3. This package has integrated various interventions in line with the ICOP guidelines for older adults for the first time in the history, not only in Pakistan, but globally as well. WHO Pakistan is also committed to support development of national standards for care home for older people in the country. With these major milestones achieved, we are confident that Pakistan would be on track to make good progress in achieving universal health coverage and addressing the healthcare needs of older people, contributing towards making population healthy and safe. Ladies and gentlemen, finally, I suggest that we need good policies and strategies for the local context. But more than that, operationalization of those and what is available is the mostly important. Integrated service delivery at primary care level with patient-centered care would be the most appropriate, as I feel. There are many time-tested models available in different Asian countries for community-level interventions, which have shown promising results. Going beyond the conventional way of looking through the lens of health, looking from the social determinants of health perspective and more focused on well-being holistically is most important, and innovations we need to bring in to address these issues in Pakistan. I am sure the wisdom brought in today during the discussion will pave the way for innovative and practical approaches to address the issues to ensure healthy aging is a reality. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Plitha, for giving an introductory remark. So it gives like an international perspective on how the healthy aging is key issue, and especially if we look into the sustainable development goal, then it will cover all dimensions that are related to health as well as deprivation of the people. And the healthy aging is one of the requirements to ensure that we have a universal health that equally benefited all the aged people. So with this, I would request Dr. Safdar to please carry on. Dr. Safdar, can you hear us?
Well, yeah. Thank you very much. I had some technical problems that delayed my joining. I'm very happy to be here in the sense that I have been associated with Social Protection Resource Center right from its inception. I remember the foundation of SPRC was laid down on 13th February, and Dr. Nasir was part of the process, and Dr. Alia, Dr. Salman, Dr. Abid. We have distinguished institutions and people supporting this initiative of Pakistan Alliance for Social Protection. And this is the first and unique think tank striving to work for the universalization of social protection in Pakistan. And before I joined National Institute of Public Policy as its dean in NSPP Lahore on 15th of February, I was dedicating all my time to it, volunteering to manage this institution. And now I'm glad that Dr. Nasir is providing the leadership to this think tank. So it was during the period that I was I would not say leading, but volunteering my time to that we decided to introduce 4 major reports to establish the baselines on the building blocks of a universal social protection program in Pakistan. One is the state of social protection in Pakistan in general. That's a general report. We launched last year on 17th of December during the Sustainable Development Conference. And then we launched this report on old age well-being, which is titled State of Old Age Well-being in Pakistan 2020. And I must thank Dr. Palitha personally for his support to our research work. This report was jointly launched by WHO Country Office and Social Protection Resource Center on the 1st of October, which is the International Day of Older Persons at Ramada, Islamabad. And we're happy to have this collaboration from WHO, and we hope to have this support for the next report of Old Age Wellbeing 2021. We are also bringing a report on health. So that is our third major building block, and one on disability, which is under review right now and would be brought out soon. Now, coming to the old age report, the way today's session is designed, and Dr. Palitha has hinted towards that also, that our policies need to respond to the local realities. The international indices are very helpful to organize the data, to have comparisons, but eventually the real purpose is to draw the attention of the decision makers to the key issues which are there, and then deploy effective policies to come over the problems that we have. So in this context, today we are very happy and lucky to have Mr. Inam Dharejo, who is the Secretary of the Ministry of Human Rights. Mr. Dharejo, thank you very much for joining us. Their division has a lot of activity going on. Gladly, it has an active leadership. And while we were discussing the designing of this webinar, I explained to him that, look, our situation is presented in this report, and in this webinar, we expect to highlight the determinants which are more important in Pakistan, so that the policies which are deployed, the resources which are deployed, respond to tackle these determinants more effectively. So I'm glad that he is here. And Dr. Asghar Zaidi, who is an authority on old age well-being at the global level. He is currently Vice Chancellor of Government College University. He was very kind to make an extremely important contribution in our report on pro bono basis. There's no need to perhaps highlight, but I must say that Social Protection Resource Center is purely not-for-profit initiative. So all the friends are there volunteering their time for the noble causes. Dr. Nasir Iqbal and other colleagues who are there, many of them are attending toward today's webinar also. So the basic objective is to present the key highlights of our findings of our survey which we did, and according to that we now understand that which are the determinants of old age well-being which are more important in Pakistan. In our next report, we are doing a district-wise comparison of ranking of different districts on the basis of these external determinants now. Mr. Muti, who is our senior specialist, he is now going to present these determinants to you. So you would be able to see that once in our next report, which would be inshallah presented on the 1st of October 2021, we would be able to see that in Pakistan, which are the districts which particularly lack or lag on certain determinants, so that we are able to help the local governments, which can do a lot more to help our senior citizens, as well as provincial and federal government, to address these problems. And many of these problems, I must say, to all the people who are here that look around, our old people are suffering. They are in pain. We are in a very bad condition when it comes to their health, their financial protection, their dignity, the functionality of women. So thank you very much to all of you for being here. And I sincerely hope that all of you would contribute to help our senior citizen in your own way. Now it's over to Mr. Mutiur Rahman. We also would have, after Mutiur Rahman, a presentation by Dr. Shujat, our friend, colleague from PIDE, who has served at BISP for a long time. So he understands the intricacies of social protection very well. We, with Dr. Nadeemul Haq, we have been discussing the need of developing indigenous indices, and I'm glad that we are doing this webinar together. I would like to personally, sincerely thank Dr. Nadeemul Haq for his leadership. We yesterday actually had discussed the outline of a major collaborative program to help develop indigenous indices. Now, with these comments, it's over to Mr. Mutiur Rahman.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saab. So nice. I'm extremely very sorry for the connectivity issues I had previously. I'm going to present the highlights of our key findings and the policy related initiatives that we identified in our annual report on state of state of old age well-being in Pakistan. Protection against the old age vulnerabilities is a key component of the policy research areas of Social Protection Resource Center. So under this ambit of this, under the ambit of this key program, vulnerability, social old age vulnerability, we have identified the key determinants of healthy aging for older people in Pakistan. We have collected the data from all over Pakistan using the representative sample. We have identified some key policy arenas and key determinants of healthy aging. I am going to share with you. The first of all, I would like to explain to you a few results which we have found. Number one is that the state of old age well-being, the functional ability and functional disability of older people. As you can see on their screens, women in old age are facing more functional disabilities as compared to the men in old age, whether it's seeing, hearing, listening, talking, walking, or the concentration, the mental concentration. So in each dimension of functionality, mental faculties, women are more prone to having functional difficulties. Okay. And if we talk about the illness among the older people, blood pressure, arthritis, and flu fever are the most commonly diagnosed illnesses which are prevailing, and due to which the older people have to visit the hospitals. This is as shown on the screen to you. When it comes to the social participation, the volunteer activity in the society, we have found that again, the participation by the older female is quite less as compared to the older male in Pakistan. We have very good concept of religious activities in the name of mosque. So older men perhaps can go to mosques 5 times a day, and they could have a better social gathering as we see in our society. However, for female participants, whether it's organizing the events, civic services, religious activities, political involvement, overall the social gatherings or the women participation in social activities is significantly less in our society. That's what we have found in our the report. When it comes to the residential status of the older people, 72% of those are living with their children or grandchildren. 9% are living with their spouse only. God help those. Living alone, there are 7% who are living alone, and 3% are living with their relatives. Okay, here I would like to add one more very critical point, which is to be noted, since we are at very highest forum of policy dialogue sitting right now, that the older people, whether they are living with their families, grandchildren, children, or alone, they have said that their dietary needs are met sufficiently. However, their medical needs are not met sufficiently. 30% of the older people have said that their medical need is not being met sufficiently. So that is one alarming. 30% is a huge number if I were to re-emphasize it. Dietary needs are met. However, the medical needs are not met in our society as they should be otherwise. So this is what very alarming for us and all of us, of course. So when it comes to measuring the determinants of healthy aging, we have developed 5 major themes based on the literature review and based on the field survey that we found that we have divided the set into 5 major themes. Socioeconomic condition of older people, physical health, mental health, social integration, which includes the social participation in the gatherings, activities, discrimination and abuse. This dimension includes the household decision making, the level of respect the older people have at home or in this community, of which we call the muhalla sometime, in the community, in the society, outside this, on the road. So these are 5 indicators, 5 themes against which we have taken total 18 indicators, and applying statistical analysis like confirmatory factor analysis, we determined top 10 determinants of healthy aging for older people. So as you could see from the slides, the top ranked determinant of healthy aging, as the data and the results suggest us, is the functional disability, followed by social participation, property ownership, physical exercise, autonomous income, household decision making, mental health, volunteer work, age discrimination, and employment status. So functional disability has been ranked as the topmost priority determinant for healthy aging among older people in Pakistan. So this is what our policy research has shown, which we really want you to present to you people, the policy makers. Okay, so I would like to add a few things. How do we do about it? I mean, but for each one of the determinant of healthy aging in Pakistan, how do we go about it? So for functional disability, social participation, property ownership, there are a few challenges: social protection response, legal and institutional support we need, and the effectiveness of those policies which the government would entail. So for functional ability or disability, since disability is more common in older people, access to better healthcare is the key challenge for older people. Living in rural areas, living in urban areas. So the social protection response, as of course, this is the matrix where the input from the esteemed colleagues, the higher level officials is required in coming in the debate after my presentation. So, but I'm just providing you the glimpse of what actually is required when it comes to the healthy aging determinants. So for functional ability, we need to ensure the healthcare for all, especially for older people, as various governments of Pakistan have tried to come up with the programs, healthcare for all programs, recently been implemented in one province in Pakistan. Legal support, absence of inclusion of functional disability in old age, and the government need to do it, and government need to do it at subnational level. Again, I would re-emphasize that the district level, at the province level, more policies are required if we are actually want to contribute to the social protection of older people when it comes to functional disability. Similarly, for social participation, we have very few opportunities, and especially very few opportunities for older people when it comes to the social gatherings, volunteer activities. So again, for that, we need a robust social protection response, and that response entails two things: a formal and informal a conducive environment. Usually in our society, as we have noted, it is kind of, it's unfortunate, but I should say this, that it's social participation of older parents or family members of household are taken for granted in a way, that they are somehow, they would be fine if we go outside and they don't come with us. It's somehow okay, he or she should be sitting at home, no problem. That type of attitudinal, informal institution in our society, that thought process is unfortunate for us. Property ownership, that there is this phenomena, and we that there is a coerced dispossession from the older people, that when your kids are old enough, they are adults, so you got to transfer your property to their name, to the boy, to the girl, and they create a kind of social pressure within the family, as it's been seen. And our result shows that many of the older people have complained that property has been forcefully taken from them by their children. That is again one unfortunate dimension in our society, as we see. Similarly, for the physical exercise, we need more and more spaces in terms of parks, etc., where they could go. Unfortunately, we don't pay much heed to that aspect when it comes to generally, and the older people are. Dr. Nadeem has been very vocal about this, even on social media, everywhere, to create spaces for people, especially for older people, and for generally, and not to go only for the elite, but to go for the masses too, the facilities which are required by the masses. So Dr. Nadeem has been very vocal about it, and I've been following him since long on this topic. Autonomous income, although we have a Benazir Income Support Program, ASAS program, which provides the autonomous income to the people who need. However, as we all know, the coverage of that program is a little not to that extent where it covers all the people, and especially the people of old age. So perhaps the autonomous income needs to be enhanced and increased, at least for the older people in Pakistan. Household decision making is something under which there are two or three things we have asked from the older people. Number one, we asked whether your children, when they are adults, whether they take into consideration your opinion or your decision while making their family-related decisions. We asked whether you respect, whether you are properly treated and in a respectful way when you go out in the street, when you go out in the park, in the public space, and even whether you are respectfully treated within your family gatherings. So that makes it to the dignity and respect of older people, which is again, although to some level, due to the social institutions in Pakistan, it is respecting the elders, it is prevalent. However, many have complained that the respectful and the dignified way of treatment within the family gatherings or outside in the street, in the park, in the markets, it's very less. So for household decision making and dignity, perhaps the change in formal and informal institutions is required in Pakistan. So these are, again, I would like to go to this slide, the main determinants, and they are ranked according to the most important perceived determinant by the older people, and a few policy recommendations. I stop here, and I expect to healthy and debate and the policy-oriented inclusion from the respected other guests. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Muti. Now, Dr. Shujat, are we together?
Yes, sir.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I hope my presentation is workable.
Not yet.
Okay, okay.
It says started sharing, but it's not yet showing.
Okay. I hope.
Yeah, now this is okay now. Please go ahead.
So, thank you, Dr. Saab. Thank you, Mati, for a very decent presentation on healthy aging index. My presentation will be comprises on two parts. First, overall, the idea of healthy aging population, where right now in Pakistan we are standing. And second, I will make few comments on the index. So basically, healthy aging is the process to develop and maintain functional abilities. And functional abilities depend on three elements. One is the essential capacity of individuals, like for example, we have elder citizens. So they have certain fundamental capacity like ability to walk, think, uh, sickness, etc., etc. So those who have more capabilities, they will ultimately have healthy aging. The second is relevant environmental characteristics. Environment could be home, it could be community, it could be broader society. And all these environment affect the behaviors. And the third is health and social sector policies, because the research shows that health interventions have much impact on the longer life as well as the healthy life of elder population. So right now, if we look the age distribution of Pakistan, we are quite young society, where 7% of the population is facing the aging phenomena. But in next 3 decades, this aging population will be double, because as demographic transition will pass and life expectancy will rise in next 3 decades, definitely we require more resources to improve functional ability, including inherent capacity of individuals, improvement in environment, and well-effective health and social sector policies. So right now, where we are standing, except few current elder slot mostly lacks fundamental capacity, as they worked in the informal sector. Thus, most of our elder population, they lack proper financial support, especially from the formal sources like pensions, universal health coverage, and other old age benefits. And environment is also not too ideal, especially for elder living in low income families, where elder people depend on the family for food, health, time care, etc. And due to resource constraint, because usually the poor families have larger household size and dependency burden, so elder peoples are mostly overlooked and live in misery and social isolation. And ultimately, the family also have to bear a double burden, because there is opportunity cost to care the elder peoples, and second, poor families lack proper employment activities. And I think that elder women are more vulnerable due to mobility constraints. Similarly, in urban areas, there are less recreational activities like parks, like libraries for the elder segments. So again, there could be more vulnerability in urban areas as compared to the rural areas. So if we see the data, this is basically the Global Age Watch 2018 report, where comparison is made across various countries. So it shows that the situation is quite worse in Pakistan, where we have the highest prevalence of diabetes, and similarly the healthy life expectancy. So as a result, if we look the Global Age Watch Index report, so Pakistan falls at 92 number out of 96 countries, where situation is quite worse on income security domain, especially. So we have a research in PIDE. For example, if you see, basically it is a panel data, and we're using the 3 waves of the longitudinal data. We found that the presence of an older person in the home pushed the households into chronic poverty. So there would be more poverty, chronic poor in those households who have certain older peoples or disabled peoples in the country. There is one issue in Pakistan that right now we don't have proper social protection systems. Social protection system means like benefits for the old age population, universal health insurance. Basically, we have the social safety net programs. But the issue is that a very limited percentage of the elder peoples are linked with these social safety net programs. Only 14% of the elder they are getting benefits from PISPR, Pakistan Baitul Mal program. And the Punjab Commission on Status Women data shows that only 3% of the women in paid employment, they are registered with PASI. And the recent, I have looked the ESA strategy that was drafted in 2019. But this ESA strategy has also excluded the elder poor peoples, except it have only one concept, and that is the old people homes. Basically, again, this ESA strategy mostly focus on those peoples who have certain formal financial support like labor pensions, like biometric payment pensions, etc. But this strategy lacks certain interventions for the poor peoples, poor elder peoples. And yes, there is good thing that right now, you know, that all the social safety net programs in the Pakistan, whether they are federal or whether they are provincial, they are using the BISP poverty scorecard data. And this BISP poverty score data have certain parameters that favor the households having elder people, like the households have more dependency or larger household size or presence of elder people in the home. They have comparatively less poverty score. So that's why these households can get the benefit. But the limitation is that, for example, BISP targeting, that is only for the women. And that is not for the elder poor people. And I served at BISP. Again, there is one issue because right now 5.6 million there are BISP beneficiaries, and these beneficiaries were enrolled in the program in 2010-11. And now most of these beneficiaries are in the age of 55 or 60. And BISP has started the biometric payments since 2017. So right now, these poor peoples, they are facing a lot of thumb impute issue because they are facing biometric thumb mismatch issues. And BISP have no alternate method where biometric exemption can be given to these poor women. So right now, even the elder people in BISP database who are the beneficiaries, they are facing big issues. So as a way forward, first I will suggest that there should be more focus to improve functional ability, where we can enhance the capability, where we can improve the environment, rather than relying on the social safety nets. Second, we require a better policy and implementation coordination among the stakeholders. And third, we require a comprehensive approach, because you know that there are two sorts of elders. One is the elder who are right now elders, and second could be the tomorrow's elders. So we should focus on youth, where we can provide them better access to health, better education, decent jobs. So ultimately, it will improve the capabilities. Second, especially for women, we should improve the financial entitlements and especially enforce the social security benefits. Third, right now our cities, they lack certain facilities, recreational facilities, and provision of services for the elder people. So our cities should be elderly friendly. Similarly, health promotion intervention, especially the awareness. You know that right now Pakistan is more prone in the world, facing the highest rate of cancers, diabetes. So certain awareness is required for the elder peoples. And PIDE has doing a lot of work on street vendors, where street vending could be explored for the elder peoples. My second component will be focused on the presentation of Matiullah, where Mati has presented the findings of index. I congratulate the SPRC. They have made a very good effort, and ultimately this index can be used for certain policy interventions, for resource allocations, and it is a starting point, and there is always room for improvement. So I have few suggestions that can be used to improve this index. So first, as I have reviewed the index, the existing sample is not too sufficient to generalize even the results at the national level or rural urban level, because sample is just 480. So I suggest that this sample can be enhanced. Second, women in the sample have less covered, because out of 480, I think there are 20% women. But I think women are more vulnerable in aging issue, because they have less socioeconomic opportunities as compared to their male counterparts in Pakistan. So in future, women participation can be enhanced in the sample. Third, as Dr. Safdar Suhail has said, that always the objective of the index is that the policies should be aligned to the findings and the problems. So as Mati have presented various indicators, basically there are 18 indicators. So tomorrow we can develop an index where certain comparison can be made across the indicators, across the regions. Like for example, if you look the multidimensional poverty index, it shows that out of 15 vulnerable districts in Pakistan, I think 12 districts fall in Balochistan. So ultimately, where there are more problems or more issues, resources can be aligned to those areas. So this index, I think this index can be used for a better policy and implementation coordination among the stakeholders. Right now, we have certain coordination issues, like even you can find that within social protection, you can find certain duplications among the federal and provincial programs, and similarly there could be certain skipping, etc., etc. So this index can be better used for exploring the opportunities for the elder segments, where resources can be pooled, where certain multi-phased interventions can be launched for the 2 days elders as well as for the tomorrow elders. So thank you, sir. This is from
Dr. Shah, thank you very much for a very incisive presentation and bringing out extremely important issues. Your suggestions about the index in itself are very welcome. In our next report, we, as I said earlier, we do plan to go to the district level. I realize that at present we are not able to do a class disaggregated analysis or rural urban based analysis. So in our next survey, we would inshallah address these issues. Now, one extremely important aspect which Dr. Shajat has brought up, which is saddening also, that what we are witnessing today is actually a result of our neglect, I would say collective national neglect of yesterday. Had we taken care of some basics over the past decades, we would not have our current generations of older people in such a bad shape. And that is true. He has pointed out also that we need to invest in health, in financial protection for the people who are in 30s and 40s now, because tomorrow they can have those aspects. And within our report, we have pointed out that it's only 25% of the senior people in Pakistan who have some kind of a financial protection. And then a very clear result which comes out that in poor households, the intergenerational aspects start kicking in. A poor person has to decide whether to spend the little money that he gets from SARS on his children or on his parents. So thank you very much, Dr. Shajat, for bringing up the concept of intrinsic capability also. And for our young people, I can see a lot of young people here. Functional disability is a function of many things. Even exercise today would help you when you become old, and the health aspect, which is extremely important, that is there too. I'm glad that Dr. Shujat has taken time to evaluate some of the policy responses, some of the responses that are already there in SARS or otherwise in health. This is out of these discussions that we would be able to evaluate the effectiveness of the current responses on the basis of the impact that they are creating. So thanks again, Shujat, and now we go to Dr. Akbar Zaidi for his presentation, who is going to start from the international perspectives and then bringing it down to Pakistan and its application in Pakistan. Thank you very much for Dr. Asghar being with us. Over to you.
Thank you so much. I will start basically giving you an overview of what work over the years I have done in constructing different indices. Two of them became quite popular. One is the Active Aging Index, which I originally constructed for European countries, and because active aging concept is very similar to healthy aging. In fact, until 2015, WHO was the organization that was promoting the idea of active aging, and later on they shifted it to healthy aging. And the second index that I constructed is the Global Age Watch Index for Help Age International in London, which is what Shujat was referring to. So prior to coming to Pakistan, almost for 10 years, I've been in this business of constructing global indices. Now, what I want to do, and if I could use 10 minutes of your time, is to quickly run through some ideas, some thinking process that we went through. And this has been done with European Union, European Commission, with UNECE, which is the UN Economic Commission for Europe, and also with UN ESCAP, the UN Economic and Social Commission in Asia Pacific. This is just to give you an idea that these international agencies were very much interested in this kind of work to provide a sense of, a comparative sense of how countries fare with respect to active and healthy aging. I thought today, and I asked many of my own students to be present, I thought it would be good to start with some broad ideas. But before that, let me just point to the philosophy which basically was driving my work. And this was said more than 150, close to 150 years ago by Lord Kelvin, who was mathematician, physicist, and engineer. He said, when you cannot express it in numbers, your knowledge is of a meager and unsatisfactory kind. And the idea is very simple, that although you will have lots of good ideas, but you need to convert those ideas into numbers to strengthen your knowledge. So the idea is that for a long period of time, there was a talk of active aging, prior to that successful aging, and now healthy aging. And we need to convert that into numbers so that we could have more substantive knowledge about the phenomenon. My presentation, I prepared this presentation as if I will have the whole hour to present it, which I of course don't have. But I just give you a taster, what I thought I would be presenting to you. First, to make the case towards these positive approaches to aging. And there, I wanted to give you some context of where Pakistan stands in comparison to other Asian countries. Then I wanted to float the idea of active and healthy aging as a policy approach. And both of the previous presenters sort of take that as a starting point. So there is perhaps no point me running through that. Then comes and that also has been mentioned by Dr. Palita, that there is a strong connection between population aging and sustainable development goals, mainly because of the pledge of leaving no one behind, but also other pledges that this program, these goals have made. This is also important for the fact that for the first time, we have a global policy framework which many countries have committed to, and they want to implement this with the best possible way. So you need to, any other policy plan that we have in mind, it would be good to link it to that global policy framework, which many countries have committed, and there is a worldwide global movement towards implementing it. Then I wanted to give you a theory of different approaches. To start with, there's the concept of successful aging, which Rowe and Kahn floated almost 50 years ago. And that led to many, much research on this model of successful aging, which was also referred to as MacArthur model of successful aging. And then in 2002, on the occasion of Madrid International Plan of Action on Aging, WHO floated the idea of active aging. And that was the emphasis that many of us took forward in that period. Especially many different countries based their national policies on older persons on that premises of active aging, which WHO was proposing. Then in 2015, the WHO's report on health the health report promoted the idea of healthy aging. All of this, for my sake, for my work, culminated in developing active aging index. And the idea, which as I mentioned, and gave you the quote from Lord Kelvin, that this idea was that, okay, all these ideas are great, we can take them as a starting point, but let's start converting those ideas into numbers. So this active aging index framework was developed with the help of an expert group, and I was the lead in that. I thought in this part 3, I could give you a broad understanding of what this framework is, and how we went about constructing index for countries around the world, the latest being 2 Asian countries, Indonesia and Thailand, but we also constructed this for the 3 other giants of this, this region, Japan, China, and Korea. So that was to, this was to give you a broad outline of what I thought I could present, which I don't have time for. And perhaps you may not be interested in listening to all of that. So what I would do, I'll just pick 1 or 2 things and then finish it off by making some broad comments on healthy aging index work that SPRC has done. So I'll pick some, I'll give some context to highlight what is the case in Pakistan, and then go towards WHO's healthy aging model so that we could pick up, and already there was a talk of intrinsic capacity and functional capability, but perhaps it's something that needs to be reiterated so that we all know what concept are we talking about. At the end, I might take a minute or 2 just to run through the active aging index work that we have done. And at some point, maybe you want to hear more details that work. So hold on to your seats. Positive, this is the context in the first part I wanted to, and it's 6.6% of persons aged 60 or more. UN define older persons as 60 or more. That's nothing written on the stone that we should always define old age people at that age threshold, but that's the statistical definition we use. 6.6% of all total population was age 60 or more in 2015 in Pakistan. But the more critical bit is not that proportion, because proportion is often fallacious, is the number involved in that 6.6%, which is in excess of 10 million, in excess of 12 million. In fact, there are only 15 countries in the world which currently, in the current time period, have more than 10 million older persons in the country. And by the time we will reach to 2050, it will be doubled, the proportion will be doubled. But that's again is not a true reflection of the challenge that we will be facing, because that 12.9 would translate into in excess of 40 million, to be exact, to be more precise, close to 42 million older persons in Pakistan. And that would be one of 5 countries in the world that in 2050, that they will have that more than 40 million older persons in the country. And that's very significant. And some of that challenge we should start identifying now. And this work on healthy aging index is a step in the right direction, that we need to start bringing about reforms now to prepare for that period when we will have in excess of 40 million older persons. Many countries don't have total population of that amount. Very quickly, I don't want to spend too much time. Bangladesh broke away from us in 71, very similar starting position, 7%. By the time 2050, the much faster rate. If you go to Iran, another country with similar situation to start with, but much, much faster rate to 2050. If you look at India, in terms of proportions, also somewhat similar starting position with us, but the proportion is much higher in 2050. And also because of the fact that population size is more than 5 times the Pakistani population, that number 19.4 is much significantly matter than what the proportion tells. China, the giant of this region, has a serious challenge in their hand. The proportions are rising much, much faster from a very high base, and the numbers involved are also astronomical. At some point, we could talk more about this and what challenges China is facing. Moving on, and I just skip this and talk about this, which Dr. Palita mentioned, but I would say that there are 2 angles to linking population aging with sustainable development goals. One is the moral case that any development strategy, which is a decent and sustainable development strategy, must be inclusive of potentially vulnerable people, and that includes older persons. And thus 2 pledges were made in the agenda of SDGs. One is no one will be left behind. And the other is often less talked about, which is we endeavor to reach the furthest behind first. And that is, if older people are indeed vulnerable persons in our society, then all our policies should be aiming to reach them first before any other group. There's economic case as well. Let me just not skip that. Here, in terms of the different models, the different theoretical constructs that we had, successful aging we started with when Rohan Khan in 1987 presented this idea. Then we moved on to other developments. And then in 2002, we came to WHO's concept of active aging, which defines the process of optimizing opportunities for health, participation, and security. These were the 3 major domains in which active aging was promoted. and you would see healthy aging was not far, the new concept of healthy aging is not far from what we are talking here as active aging. Then coming straight to the healthy aging concept, we could see, and that has been already referred to, the defined as the process of developing and maintaining the functional ability. So the concept, the central concept is the functional ability, but that another central concept that comes is the well-being in old age. So functional ability that enhances well-being in old age. And that again is a combination of intrinsic capacity and the external environment. I don't have time to go into that, but it has already been referred to. This picture perhaps can explain the two concepts of intrinsic capacity and functional ability much better. As you get older, intrinsic capacity indeed naturally declines. But it's through better environment, through more age-friendly environment, you actually push that curve upward. So the functional ability, if you have a good, strong environment, it declines at a much slower rate than the intrinsic capacity. And there lies the role of good public policies, good social protection system, that despite a natural decline in our capacities, the system helps us to maintain certain functional ability even in very old age. The active aging index, and if you allow me, Dr. Sab, have I got another 2-3 minutes?
You have 2-3 minutes, please.
Okay, all right. So there I give you this idea, an active aging index work we started in 2012, which was the European Year for Active Aging. And we realized that there are lots of good ideas promoting active aging, but there was nothing, no numerical measure to give us a sense of how one country does in comparison to other, and what policies may have put that country ahead of other countries. So we came up with this, and there's a whole load of papers arguing why this set of indicators. We came up with 22 indicators, which were then organized in 4 domains. And for each indicator, we obtained data differently for men and women. Initially, we constructed this index for 28 European Union countries. And this was the final outcome of different streams of work that was done in the European Year for Active Aging 2012. So the definition that we adopted in this is that active aging is a situation where people are able to live healthy, independent, and secure lives. So this was very similar to WHO's definition of active aging. And here we are referring to, when we talk about activity, we are talking about formal labor market as well as other unpaid productive activities that are often done at home. And if you look at this picture, you could see that not only we're looking at employment as a form of active aging, but participation in society, but also another aspect is to be able to live independently is another form of active aging. And the 4th domain is very similar to what healthy aging concept is now bringing forward, is the enabling environment for active aging, where we look at life expectancy, we look at mental well-being, we look at use of ICT, social connectedness, even human capital aspects. And this was taken up very well by the European countries. So these are some comments we received. The active aging index, composite index, enables countries to more easily identify their policy priorities. The active aging index serves as well as an analytical as well as diagnostic tool for a wide stake of stakeholders. In the recent work that we did for your Asian countries, we also had a close review of different indices that exist on aging, active aging index. As I mentioned, I was myself involved. There are two other indices that I was myself leading. One was the Global Age Index, Global Age Watch Index, which we did for 96 countries. And there we also had Pakistan included. And another simple index we developed for UK only, which was at the individual level, and that was also done in 2017. In fact, this confirmatory analysis that you did for Healthy Aging Index for Pakistan, that is the technique we used for this Age UK Index of Wellbeing in later life. At some point, I could provide you more details. And then we develop a kind of different steps that needs to be done in identifying, in constructing an index. Two most important concepts is to select the indicators which are relevant, and then select the proper normalization and weighting method. In the confirmatory method that you're using, those weights are defined by your statistical software. So in many ways, depending upon which data you are using, each data set will have its own weights, because that uses the triangulation of different determinants in a single data set. So this was the new index, which we started constructing for many countries. And the latest country that we have constructed this index is Azerbaijan. But I will be presenting results for other European countries and Asian countries where results for Azerbaijan are not included. Here, again, we are talking about the same kind of 4 broad domains, but when we came to some aspects, we started redefining some of the indicators, because in the Asian context, they were more relevant. Okay, and these are the results. And here I'm presenting the results of 33 countries. And these are the results presented in one of the reports that I sent to people on the WhatsApp group. And you could see, and here, just let me spend 1 minute on this slide, because it now gives you the results for 4 domains. And then it gives you the result of the overall index. And then it gives you the ranking of countries on the base of the overall index. Now, by looking at different countries doing differently in different domains, we can quite easily identify what policy priorities one country has in comparison to the other country. Because in that way, you could say one country does better in one respect, say in employment, but doesn't do very well in social participation. The other country which does well in social participation, what might be the policies that they had successfully pursued. So not only such a framework provides you a good sense of where one is falling short, but it also points to good policies of other countries that have done as well in some domain. Okay, and then if you are able to do differential analysis for men and women, as we did for these 33 countries, you will be able to then identify whether women fall short and in what respect, what of the 4 domains or different indicators that they fall short. So here we could look at that in majority of the countries, women are falling short, have less active aging than men, which is quite surprising that even in the most developed countries, women still fall behind when it comes to the matters of active and healthy aging. Okay, and then what you could do, and I won't be presenting these results, what you could do, then you could look at each of the domain. For instance, we were looking at employment, and within employment, you have 3 different indicators, and then you have employment specific index, and then you can see the ranking and gender disparity within the subdomain of employment. And again, you can identify which of the 3 indicators used in this domain one country does better than the other, and what might be the policies responsible. Okay, and then second domain is social participation, independent living is the third, and the enabling environment is the fourth. So this is where I finish. So two, for the work that you have started doing for Healthy Aging Index, I would say it actually, although you want to sort of park yourself in a single context of Pakistan, it always helps to have at least some other context to compare with, because then you could say how our country fare in comparison to other, and what might be good policies in other countries that can be replicated in our context. That said, norms and contexts do matter strongly. But even if you are restricting your analysis to a single country, you have to do some equity considerations, and that would be intra-country analysis, where you could look at, for instance, differences between men and women, that there should be equal opportunities for both men and women in terms of attaining active and healthy aging. Lots of work has been written and published in these references, and I will provide you these lists if you wish to have it. Otherwise, thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Zaidi. Like always, it's good to have you. I'm sure that the SPRC team would benefit from your suggestions regarding the methodology. We have been having discussions with a lot of our partners about the next survey that we are undertaking and the report. So these are very helpful comments, and I thank you again, like Shujat, to bring up the concept of healthy aging, and the participants in this webinar need to realize that the gap between life expectancy at birth in Pakistan and healthy life expectancy is large. So already our life expectancy at birth is 66 years, and with the much shorter healthy life expectancy of 57, so you could imagine the implications for the labor market. And if you disaggregate by gender and by class, the women folk in the poor households, their healthy life expectancy is somewhere in the late 40s. So we are destroying our generations from the other end. And according to the latest labor force survey, the most productive age in Pakistan is not 60s or 70s, as is the case in many, many countries where people have very high average incomes when they are in 60s or 70s. In Pakistan, it's in 40s, which basically tells that it's the physical strength which matters. So the situation is not very, very pleasing. And I would say with a lot of seriousness that this is a human right issue. We have one full big segment of our population in Pakistan, which is marginalized. And I would say because these are the positive policy responses could help the people, so one is bound to say that this marginalization is conscious, in the sense that the system is creating this systematic marginalization of a huge number of people. We talk about a lot of minorities. I think this is one minority which apparently is our own parents, and we have marginalized them. This is a human right issue, and we have as our chief guest today, who is Secretary of the Human Rights Division, a very active division, and I have the pleasure of knowing Mr. Inam even otherwise also. So it's a wonderful, great choice to bring a relatively young officer, but very senior otherwise, to head this important ministry with so much to do, with so much on its platter. Mr. Inam is a PS officer of 1990 batch. I must share some minimum details about him. Studied from Bahawalpur Sadiq Public, a well-known school, and then University of Birmingham. He has served in various capacities in Sindh government and federal government as Assistant Commissioner Islamabad, Deputy Commissioner Sangha, Commissioner Sangha. So he understands the working of the local government also very well. He has been Secretary Trade Development Authority of Pakistan, my own old ministry. And before joining as Secretary of the Ministry of Human Rights, he was the Secretary for National Heritage and Culture Division also. Inam sir, we are very happy to have you here. Thanks for sparing time. And as we are talking about the effectiveness of policy responses, your thoughts as a chief guest would be helpful to us to refine even further our policy inputs. We work for you people, and we hope that this partnership would grow in the coming days to the common cause, that is to reduce the avoidable pain and misery of the old people. Inam Sahab, it's over to you.
Thank you, sir. Respected Dr. Safdar Saab, Executive Director, SPRC, Dr. Nadeemul Haq, Vice Chancellor, Pakistan Institute of Development Economics, esteemed Dr. Asghar Zaidi, Vice Chancellor, Government College University, Dr. Palitha G. Maipala, Dr. Shujat Farooq, Mr. Matiur Rahman, my fellow colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and good evening. I'm extremely thankful to the management of SPRC and PIDE to give me an opportunity to be part of this development discourse, which relates to an issue which has manifested itself palpably but has not been able to capture the relevant policy space so far. It's only very recent that it has been able to get some positive response from the policymakers in the form of legislative initiatives. First and foremost, I must congratulate and appreciate the hard work done by the management of SPRC and its core team, and the pro bono contributors who have helped in preparation of a very illuminating as well as grim piece of informative report, which attempts to bring a very serious policy deficit area to the center stage, which has remained hitherto neglected and has not become a policy imperative so far. The ranking of Pakistan on Global Age Watch Index, Gavi, which stands out as 94th out of 96 countries, itself is a very grim and timely reminder for all of us that the comprehension and understanding of the complexities associated with old age population is rather poor in this country. The burgeoning population will further complicate the challenge of addressing this issue in not too distant future as demographics data predict. It has been very aptly pointed out in the annual report that old age people suffer from discrimination, neglect, loneliness, and compete for meager resources with the other household members, wherein the needs of other members of the household gets preference over the needs of the older people. There is pretty decent development literature which points out the fact that in old age, as the income streams dwindle, poverty creeps in and cause or aggravate multiple health issues, leading to a situation where 30% of older people suggest that their needs for medicine remain unmet. There is a very strong need to address this issue through targeted policy interventions. The other aspect of this is that if you review the literature, it transpires that in Pakistan, the investments in human development have always remained low. Therefore, our progress on Human Development Index has also remained poor in the regional context. When we analyze the comparative data on social sector indicators, it also throws another important determinant, which is how much financial space is provided to these sectors by respective governments. The issue of macroeconomic stability has haunted our economic managers since the inception of this country, barring few episodes. Therefore, rightful allocation of resources to different social sectors has always remained a tricky issue in Pakistan. The social sector allocations cannot be termed satisfactory considering the ominous challenges which this report purportedly raises. This report rightly points out the disproportionate adverse impact on the older women as their health status remain more compromised than men despite having more longevity. This report also highlights the initiative taken by our regional countries such as India and Bangladesh. The Indian government focuses predominantly on cash subsidy programs like reduced income taxes, more returns on savings, and traveling concessions, etc. Whereas Bangladesh has more rights-based approach where there is Parents Maintenance Act 2013. However, rights-based approach within social family relationship has its own perils and pitfalls as it brings intra-stress in intra-familial relationships between different members of the households. Perhaps a mix of both approaches with rights-based approach being the dominant flavor would be a suitable proposition in our cultural context. I would like to here briefly give you the overview of what the initiatives of Ministry of Human Rights have been in the recent past, since it will be pertinent to traverse through the path which we have followed to achieve our objectives in the government sector. As you are well aware that the Constitution of Pakistan attaches utmost importance to protection of fundamental rights, with social security finding a specific mention in Article 38, A, D, and E. However, legislative journey to attain these objectives under social security rights has been a recent one, and at best it can be described as work under progress. After 18th constitutional amendment, the onus of legislation on human rights has been devolved to provinces. One witnesses a lot of proactive and progressive right-based legislation in provincial assemblies, with Government of Sindh and Punjab enacting certain laws related to human rights domain. Although certain initiatives have been promulgated, but still the problem lies with the implementation mechanism, which is either too weak or benign or still not put in place, and it needs constant momentum to keep the wheel moving. Keeping in view the constitutional requirement, Federal Ministry of Human Rights had also drafted a bill, namely Senior Citizens Bill, which aims to establish a Senior Citizens Council, which will act as instrument to formulate policy on aging in the light of national and international commitments on the welfare of senior citizens and submit these proposals for approval to the ministries concerned. The creation of old age homes known as Darul Shafqat would be created to accommodate senior citizens of Islamabad, since Federal Ministry's jurisdiction is the ICT Capital Territory. Certain facilities and privileges are also proposed in the bill, such as financial support, special medical treatment, concession on medicines, and traveling. Another act which explicitly deals with persons with disabilities has also been promulgated, namely ICT Acts of Rights of Persons with Disabilities 2020. The Council for Rights for Persons with Disabilities has been established. Its operational mechanism in the form of finalization of its rules is about to be finalized. Its main feature is the certification for assessment of disability and placement for employment and other facilities and concessions. So far, this council within the territorial limits of Islamabad has issued more than 18,000 certificates to persons with disabilities in Islamabad alone for employment and other facilities. Ministry of Human Rights is also pursuing a policy with other main divisions of federal government to ensure observance of mandatory 22% employment quota for the disabled. Going through the recommendations which have been mentioned in the annual report, the first one related to the 5 aging dimensions like health, socioeconomic status, independence, dignity and respect, and social protection. Let me state that most of these dimensions and determinants are embedded in the Ministry of Human Rights initiatives, and in fact are a substantive part of rules of business of Ministry of Human Rights. Then there's issue of property ownership, and Mr. Mati, during the course of his presentation, had highlighted the aspect of coerced dispossession. That is an issue which is aggravating the conditions of the elderly people recently, although not directly addressing this issue, but there has been a legislative effort on the part of federal government where the inheritance of the women folk, which traditionally gets obviated or they are not transferred to the women folk, that has been ensured through another legislation. Although the earlier Inheritance Act is there, so this piece of legislation kind of reinforces that. So it's not going to solve the entire problems, but I do have a strong sense and belief that some of the coercion which used to take place could be neutralized through this piece of legislation. Then there was another recommendation which was related to the government interference in the form of visitation by the police officers or by the intervention of Home Department. That idea has been floated in some of the divisions or the stakeholders, but so far, Ministry of Human Rights has not been able to kind of subscribe to this idea. The Ministry of Human Rights stance is that codification of family laws or family intra-relationships, if it is codified, that has the tendency of create stress and tension within the households, and it will open a floodgate of litigation with households also that will have its own perils and pitfalls. Anyway, there are some of the stakeholders who think there is a need for introduction of Parenting Act. So that matter is still in the process of having debates and discourses, and accordingly it will be thrashed out as they proceed. Then the fourth recommendation was related to social safety programs outreach. One of the speakers very rightly mentioned that, you know, the excess or the outreach of all these social safety programs is very limited in its scope and limited in its outreach. So again, whenever we talk in terms of kind of bloating the size of the supplements or the social safety programs, the issue of how much resources can be allocated comes into the foreplay. Let me share that, you know, in recent times, because of the last 3 or 4 years, the rural poverty, because of the failure of certain crops, has aggravated. So the impact on the people with advanced age or older age is significantly higher than you know what it used to be in 2000s, in period prior to 2016. As a concluding comment, I would like to reiterate the fact that Ministry of Human Rights is cognizant of the issues being faced by the aging population and strives to address those in limited space available through a mixed matrix of rights-based and welfare initiatives. This annual report, however, accords us an opportunity to look at the issue through a lens which dissects the issue threadbare and place all the gaps and prospective solutions on the table. I want to assure the participants and specifically SRPC that this document would be consulted by MHR time and again to make it part of our initiatives to plug the gaps wherever they exist. I would once again compliment SPRC and PIDE for bringing a document which gives us food for thought and become part of the policy prescriptions in the future. In the end, I would also like to thank the speakers who had given wonderful presentations and illuminated all of us and given us something to think about on these lines. I'm extremely thankful to the organizers to provide me an opportunity to share my thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Inam Sab, for being here in the first place and then sharing with us the activities and programs at your division. We're very heartened to see that a lot of work is being done and this issue is high on your agenda. Thank you very much for thoroughly going through our report and This is a matter of satisfaction for us that our policy inputs are being looked at seriously. They already are current ongoing concerns of your division. That is good to learn. We are there to help you developing these initiatives further. Look at the implementation status. So we hope that we continue being engaged and get your guidance on directing our research and development program. At SPRC, old age and disability are one of the major research and development programs, and we have many activities going on in that sense. So there we would, inshallah, keep a regular contact with your ministry. We have our own plan of establishing senior citizen forum in Islamabad. I'll share the document with you. Maybe there we can join hands on that. We already have produced a paper on the system of certification, which is there, and we have some concrete suggestions to make, because right now the system of certification is geared only towards jobs. Whereas we think that the intellectual disability, which is the so-called invisible disability, is on the rise. So there the people can be productive, but there the dynamics are very different. So we need to look at the assessment and the certification systems anew. This is an extremely important system because even BISP is providing support to a person with disability on the basis of the certification and NADRA registration, which has its own limitations. So that is an issue on which we would be very happy to share our previous work with you. And I personally appreciate your mentioning the fact that too much codification can be problematic. We know that there are issues, there are societal changes, and there could be events of excesses, but at the same time, we should not bring too much legislation. I know that in China, India, Bangladesh now, they have brought laws which promise penal actions against the children who do not take care of the parents. I think in our case, this may be the case in some cases, but this balanced, careful approach is extremely important. And coming from you, I'm really happy and would like to acknowledge that this finesse is needed. On a lighter note, in India, they had these acid burning cases of bahus, and they gave too much powers to the bahus. And now they have literally hundreds of thousands of cases, and they are trying now to find a balance. But I think this is the engagement with the think tanks and educational institutions like PIDE, which creates these platforms of discussion where one can mutually enrich by improving the policy. So thank you very much. We do not have much time with us, but I have two of my respected colleagues who are also part of our Pakistan Alliance for Social Protection. We have Dr. Alia with us, who is actually one of the founding directors of Social Protection Resource Center, a labor expert. She has been Dean of Social Sciences, Kadam University. Dr. Saiba, आप काइंडली सवाल कीजिए, उसके बाद लुबना से हम सवाल लेके फिर इंशाल्लाह सेशन को वाइंड अप करते हैं.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Safdar. And I'm glad that I'm part of this, I would call a path-breaking webinar on this very important topic of healthy aging. I speak both as a labor economist who teaches and believes in the life cycle approach, that every cycle point in the life cycle is important from a policy and law perspective. And also as a daughter-in-law of a father-in-law for whom I struggled to find care services in a country which has a huge youth population, but since the care economy is not given importance as an economic sector for employment, the care services are designed very informally and very in a very rudimentary manner, which is not even sensitive to the needs of older people. And in the COVID perspective, the care economy has emerged as the single most important sector which is going to create jobs for youth, even if automation and mechanization and technological developments take over in other sectors. So I would like to highlight the importance of the care economy, which has never been given importance as an area which could produce trained care professionals who could earn a living by taking care of elderly people, and also obviously the poor segments of the population cannot afford paid care workers. So the policy initiatives should also think of designing a system which is in vogue in Europe and in the US, of social workers who visit the homes of people in need and spend time with them when they are all alone, so that their mental health is also taken care of, and they also run some basic chores for them, like getting medicines or other supplies which the other household members sometimes do not have time for. So I think this webinar has raised a whole lot of issues which need to now be addressed. The other point that I was thinking is that access to medical and health services for older people is not very easy, because the transportation is not elderly friendly. There are no retractable ramps in buses on which they could easily climb onto buses. A lot of accidents take place, and the whole transportation system is not geared for catering to the needs of older people. And similarly, there are no services. For example, even the middle class families find it hard to get the medical services at home to attend to elderly people who cannot easily be taken to hospitals for even regular checkups. So I think we need to think of many dimensions of aging, and I would request the Ministry of Human Rights to take a very comprehensive approach towards this whole issue of aging. And maybe the Aging Council that you are proposing, it should have people from different social sciences and even natural sciences as well, so that they could all give inputs for a whole package of services that would support healthy and respectable aging in Pakistan. Thank you very much.
Before we get back to the speakers, we have quick questions from Sadia first and then Lubna.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm Sadia Abdullah. I just completed my MPhil in public policy from PIDE. Basically, it is a topic of my great interest, as I did my thesis on social engagement among elderly population of Islamabad. It was great to hear a lot of experts on this topic. I just had my little input as per my minute knowledge in front of all the experts, that basically while studying, as I studied the concept of social participation out of one of the three components of the active aging, basically as we have studied in literature that there is a positive relationship between their health status and the social participation among the elderly population, then I think there is a great role of the usage of mobile phones and the gadgets while discussing the social participation. Then why don't we highlight that element of the social participation which can ultimately affect the as in healthy aging as well? And this is my little input, that why don't we work on that particular section? Like we are a developing country. We don't have so much resources to cover the whole population, to give them their appropriate rights. Why don't we go towards those factors which ultimately affect their healthy aging? Thank you.
Lubna, please go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Sohail. I have just 2 points to add to this ongoing wonderful discussion. My first point is that, as Muhammad Rahman has mentioned in his presentation, that elderly dietary needs are sufficiently met in Pakistan. The problem remains with the medical needs. If you see in Pakistan, one of the problem which is quite obvious nowadays is the mental health. And this is common in our elderly population. So what we need to do, we actually cannot put everything on government to come and do. We need to mobilize communities. So here my suggestion is that the policymakers should strengthen the coordinated efforts of the NGOs and the government to create the support groups, because we need the support groups to make people, especially the older people, actively engage in different unpaid activities, which actually provide them moral boost. So that is my first point, that we need coordinated efforts of the NGOs and the government to mobilize communities and to create support groups. And if you see in China and India, these support groups are effectively working to improve the active participation of the older population. The second point is that, as Shujat mentioned, that we need to promote healthcare interventions. Yes, I agree with him that yes, we need to promote healthcare interventions. But the point is that yes, we intervene, we create some, we provide some healthcare services through some intervention. But what about the monitoring and evaluation? We have weak monitoring and evaluation system. When we don't go back to the target group or to the vulnerable group, what we see that our all efforts relapse. So we need to strengthen that monitoring and evaluation system. This is again a policy related initiative. So these are my 2 points. Again, I thank you for organizing such an excellent webinar, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Alia, thank you very much. Your guidance is our continuous support. You are obviously our founding director of our board. I think I'll suggest to PIDE that we do a webinar on care economy. I think that is a very neglected area. And this suggestion of voluntary work, that again is extremely important. So how to combine voluntary care with the care economy, I think that's extremely important. And on the methodology side also, I think we have had a lot of suggestions regarding the index, and I would ask Dr. Nasir and Dr. Nadeem to quickly organize a technical workshop where we would invite many friends from this group also to have a dedicated session on the formulation or improving the SPRC index, because now very soon we will be launching the national survey. So it would be very good to have that feedback with us. Inam Sab, are you with us? Ji, for your final comments, please.
A couple of comments which you had mentioned, particularly related to the certification issue that's explicitly geared towards the disability and the employment placement. So let me share it with the forum that, there has been a thorough thinking on our part with the President himself, President of Pakistan, taking the lead, where we are going to reorient our categorization. And for the first time, the people with older age having infirmities would also be categorized as having impaired or disabilities, which would be further kind of bracketed in our policy interventions. So it's not going to kind of certification process is not going to kind of confine itself towards identification of the physical disability itself. Old age itself would be described as an infirmity or a disability. And in the future, we are going to cater for that as well. So that policy prescription is on the table to kind of enhance the scope of the Disability Act itself. Number one. Number two, there was another question related to the care services being neglected or the gaps being noticed. So this COVID phenomena have thrown up very, very strange kind of nuances and opportunities and gaps also. So we are also thinking we have a Directorate General of Special Education where certain set skills are imparted to the people who cannot afford. So this is one discipline where we can also explore along with the other disciplines. And this is where the role of TEFTA can also be explored. And since our ministry is also in partnership with TEFTA, so this is another area where we can have an interactive dialogue with TEFTA to take it up as a set of skills to be imparted to the people. That was another comment. I think that's about all what I want to say. Once again, thank you very much.
Dr. Safdar, kindly unmute yourself, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Inam Sab. And as we now wind up, Dr. Nasir, are you around?
Yes.
It's over to you now. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much for everyone for giving, for attending this webinar. It was really useful to highlight key issues, especially related to aging. And just I would like to add one or two things before we formally conclude this session. One is the role of basically the mental as highlighted by Lubna. So we are planning to do another webinar in the coming days on this mental health issues with some sort of inviting psychiatrists and also the health economist, how it can be basically what is the implication, what are the prevalence of these mental health issues and what economic cost it has to us. So we are hoping to do this very soon. And also I would like to say that we are on the Labor Day on the 5th May, we are planning a one-day, basically a conference on these socioeconomic issues. Especially we are targeting two main keywords. One is poverty and other is the social protection system. So we are hunting the key speaker for that, and that would be one of the key event, two key event in coming days. So with these two announcements, I would like to thank all of you for attending this webinar, and we hope you will also attend in the future webinar. And the list is available on PIDE website, where you can find so many policy-oriented issues where PIDE is contributing toward the local solution, as highlighted in the very beginning of this webinar by the Palitha, that we really need a local solution that would be developed by our researcher. And one of the initiatives that initiated at PIDE is the Rasta, that gives an opportunity to the local researcher to come and show their skills to research the local issues. Thank you so much, all of you. Allah Hafiz.